Good day, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, even though I was expecting some snow, and I'm very deceived. And I heard we're a week too late. So yes, my name is Hans Köppel. I run a unit in the Foreign Office, so I'm a diplomat in Germany and Berlin. And we are working on foreign policy aspects of the Energiewende, the energy transition, which is also part of it actually literally means turnaround, which is actually quite significant. But in English, of course, we tend to say more often than energy transition. Interestingly enough, the word Energiewende is used quite frequently also by Anglo-Saxon speakers like President Obama and others as an example for what you can do, because we really look into turning around our entire energy supply and with this our societal output. I will mainly focus on energy this time, so I think it will be a bit different to my predecessors here on this podium, but I think it might be interesting as well, because it was mentioned that indeed in the northern region, your grid and your cooperation in this field is quite extensive already, and we think it's part of what you can do in Europe and what we do in Germany. So my predecessor talked about the trias. Our trias in Germany is security of energy supply, together with to keep energy affordable, and of course it has to be environmentally sound energy. So you see even our Dutch neighbors, they have a little bit of a different energy trias. This is ours. We have 5 main reasons. One of the reasons, of course, which is always mentioned, is that there's a very popular demand for exiting nuclear power by 2022, which we will do. Everything is ready to do so. But nowadays, this was maybe the initial part which came up in the public debates in Germany. But nowadays, when we look at the Energiewende, energy transition, and I think this is important also or interesting to Nordic countries, we do see it as an engine for development, new technologies, sources of growth and employment, and I will come back to what we have done in the past. But we also see that we think the Energiewende shows very well that you can decouple growth from CO2 emissions. We have done this over the last 3-4 years. So you can definitely see that you can be, as a highly industrial, bigger country, to move into a more sustainable way of production. Yes, as it was mentioned before, and some of the countries here as well, it is important to reduce the dependency on external imports. We also believe from a foreign policy aspect that it is actually reducing international conflicts if you have more domestic sources and renewables, because you're not dependent on transfer. But this is still open to debates. We do believe it reduces geopolitics in the energy sector as well. Of course, climate is an important thing, and of course after Paris and Marrakesh we are working on this, and it's part of the strategy. We base our actions, and we've heard this today as well. Increasingly, we started with renewable energy in 2000. There was the first initiative with the feed-in tariff in 2000, which most people believe we actually switched after Fukushima, but it is much older. We started in the year 2000 to start to incentivize to move into renewables. And increasingly what we focus now, and we talk about energy efficiency first. So nowadays, if we would do this slide again, we would put energy efficiency on the other side, because we believe that we can save there. There's a huge potential which we can look, and we have a national plan how to move forward on these aspects. What are our fields of action? This is the market and the system. We believe we have to make renewables fit for the market, but we also have to make the market fit for renewables. That means, of course, we have to adapt our grids. We have to cooperate closer with our neighbors. As you see down on the bottom, we integrate this entirely within the 2030 targets of the European Union, and we do work together with our neighbors in some of the Nordic countries. We currently built, with the Norwegians, we built a link, the Northern Link, which is actually an electric link, so this Norwegian hydropower serves as a storage facility for our renewable wind and solar power. We have a similar setup with Sweden and, of course, with Denmark. Actually, I think it is quite interesting in this area. we have the first time with Denmark a common auction. Both countries auction off the different for renewable energy, and so the Danes and the Germans open it up in a pilot. So wherever the cheapest outcome will win the tender, and then the energy plant will be set up in either Germany or Denmark, produced for the other country. So we see this is something we should move on. This is a first pilot, but in the long run we want to have 5% of our energy production done by bilateral agreements in our neighboring countries. Of course, energy research and development is very strong because, as we all know, storage is still a problem and other areas where we can improve it heavily. Just a short aperçu of our targets. You see on the right, left-hand side, no, for you on the right-hand side, 2050, these are our targets. The reduction of the greenhouse gases to up to 80% the reduction. We are now at 2016 over 30. Then the renewable energy is currently, we moved up to 32% of our entire energy production is now actually in 2016, it's at 33.4. So you see here we are actually almost above target. And we are also, you see the energy efficiency where you want to go down. The green stripe is always where we are in 2005. So the baseline is we are very much on track. What we have very ambitious goals, and I think the 33.4% in 2016 on our energy production, not the primary energy production, but the energy production as such, for a large country like ours is quite unique right now, considering that we don't have hydropower or very little hydropower. Of course, Norway and other countries have a large amount of that. What I said, we are on track, and I think this is important. If you think about what we discussed today, is that you have to tackle all the different elements at the same time. And that's part of our planning, where you can see legislative, the German part, together with the coordination within the European and the regional cooperation. One has to really work very hard and change a huge amount of laws and different elements of the market. And we have, for that, we started, we had a green book on the energy market, and then we introduced a white book on the energy market, which is actually available in English as well, and which actually prescribes quite a lot the different possibilities of what we discussed. Germany has, interestingly maybe for you, has chosen to have what we call Energy Market 2.0, meaning we will try to feed in 80% renewables into our grid without a capacity market. Other European countries have chosen another way. If you want to do this, of course, as you see, you have to adapt, as I said before, also not only the renewables to the market, but also the market for the renewables and, of course, the different systems. We have, right now, we have changed, we adapted them because we had we have currently an overcapacity of energy production in Germany. Renewables were very profitable due to a feed-in tariff. We had a very rapid rise of renewables, which posed some stress in the grids and made the cost go up. So we had a revision. So we now, for the new projects, we stopped the feed-in tariff. We go into tendering. As I mentioned before, we also look into tendering together with our European neighbors and electricity neighbors. The guidelines is to have it very cost-effective and efficient, and of course to have a fair chance for all the stakeholders. And I will come back later to this, because one part of, and I think it fits very good into this subject as well, is we have a very democratic part of the Energiewende, which means today there are a large amount of Germans who are actually prosumers, who consume and produce energy. And we want to keep them in the market. We are not technology neutral. Mostly it's wind on and offshore. It's photovoltaic and to some extent still biomass, while the potential of biomass in Germany is not as big as in some of the countries I heard here. yeah, you can see the different sizes of auctions. So we will the level of megawatt plants is adapted to our targets, so we can actually plan easier the increase of renewables in the net, which gives us a higher security also on the grid. Brand new, last week presented in Marrakesh and decided last week by our cabinet is our climate action plan. I think it is important to mention it's one of the first climate action plans up to 2050. And here you just see a little split out which different sectors of the German industry and society will have to contribute to keep our climate targets, which we brought into Paris, so we can fulfill them. You might have read it, it was quite controversial in different sectors, and one of the sectors was the agriculture sector, because it does contribute quite tremendously to the CO2 emissions in Germany, but we have to see how this is. So this is last week's decision, will then go to Parliament. Now I wanted to focus a little bit more on the benefits. We believe, because this is increasingly the driver, the exit out of nuclear, I think, is anticipated, and these benefits of our energy transition made them, on the last poll, 93% of German citizens believe this is the most important policy we have, and even 95% of Germans believe that we should even focus more. So despite, you might read in the newspapers, we discuss very strongly inside of Germany and often quite intense how to move forward, but the energy transition as such is a large popular consensus, and I think that is part of the idea why this is actually possible, because the large majority of the population is behind it. And why? Because they see the benefits. So we reduced the cost of energy imports through energy efficiency and renewable sources. Just in 2014 was over 30 billion euros. So you can see we do rely, of course, particularly on gas from the Netherlands, Norway, and Russia, but we do decrease the dependency. And the benefits of jobs created in the last years was 355,000, which clearly shows that it is a technology, a high technology, high tech sector, which is very close to the very industrialized base of Germany. So it is all the mechanics and tech companies who actually start to refocus on the renewable sector and can use their know-how there. Here's a split up how you can see where in different fields where the jobs were created, particularly in wind energy, photovoltaic. There was a larger employment in the past, but of course some of the market was lost to foreign competitors who produce solar panels just much cheaper than you can produce them in Germany. I think what is important, and this is increasingly what we look into it, and I think it is something also the Nordic countries looking into it, and it was said before, if you invest today into the energy sector, which is still one key sector if you want to move into a sustainable economy, everything you invest today will determine your energy policy in the next 40 to 50 years. And to channel the investment funds into the right areas where so to be affordable and sustainable is I think, the big challenge for all of us. And you can see that, for example, this is quite a significant number if you think about it, that Germany had enough power production capacity before we entered even renewables. There you see a split up, of course, where in different areas. As I said before, we will focus in the future on the wind energy on and offshore. Mostly is still onshore, but offshore becomes increasingly attractive, and photovoltaic, and then biomass. The other three, there's not that much potential anymore due to the geologic or geographic position. I was asked a little bit to look into the different regions. I think this is very particular, that you have and I mentioned it before, that you have a large public acceptance because you have this citizen involvement, and you see that today over 800,000 people are producing in Germany energy. We used to have 4 big utilities which had to restructure today. Maybe you've read it. Finland has felt some of the restructuring that E.ON, for example, restructured and left some of your nuclear power plant projects. I think this is very important. It is a democratization of energy production, which is very important in any kind of energy transition. We have increasingly 100% renewable regions in Germany. That's their targets. There's 153 regions in Germany which are aimed. They give their own goals. So as we are a very federal country, the federal the federal level decides on the overall national targets, which then will be cut down on the state level and then in the communities and regions. And here you can see that right now they are covering 1/4 of all German citizens will live in regions which have the target to become 100% renewable. If you need more information, we are also on the actors in Germany. Particularly, I thought it would be useful for this circle here. We published a booklet on all the different actors, or the main actors and stakeholders in the energy transition in Germany, which also, of course, are more than happy to cooperate with you on different aspects, transborder and transnationally, which, if they probably do already, you can look them up. It's online, but we can also send you a hard copy. Thank you very much.
Danke sehr.